This year's Master Investor Show is going to be the biggest, the best, and the most informative ever event, says investor and entrepreneur Jim Mellon. And I'm delighted to say that I am joined by him. So, Jim, you are a backer of the show. So, you made that comment from being inside the circle of trust. And I'm supposing you would say that in any case.
Yeah, I guess it's like every time the Olympic Games finish, they say it's the best ever, and bring on the next one, which will be even better. So, but in this particular case, it's true, and I think the main reason for that is that post-pandemic, people are keen to get out and to meet companies face to face, but also, as I understand it, we now have absolutely no competition. There were one or two shows that existed, and I don't think they exist anymore. So we're the only investor show that takes place in London. I think that's right. I don't know if you know any better than me, but I think that's correct. And so obviously, there's a high focus on it, and there are many exhibitors for this particular show, and I think some great speakers.
So, in its purest form, the show is a golden opportunity for investors to meet the leadership of publicly listed companies. From my point of view, it's evolved into this pressure cooker of ideas and productivity. Things happen at the show, and it's not just about the friendships that are being made there.
Yeah, I think that's a very good way of putting it, Sarah. You know, there are regular visitors who've been coming for years, and then there are new demographics that come every year. I'm not sure how many people will come this year, but I would think it's probably close to 5,000. And they get a lot of attention from companies because if you go to one of the stands, you're getting much more in-depth conversations with the managing directors, typically, or the leading people in these companies than you would if you went to an annual general meeting or if you sort of rang up the investor relations department or looked at the company's presentations online. So I think it's very much appreciated. And it's certainly the case that some companies get very significant investor engagement. And, the day after the show, some of their share prices can be up 10, 15, 20%. I've seen that before. So it definitely has a positive effect for the companies that sign up to be there.
It's not just publicly listed companies, though, is it, Jim? Because it's a range of investments. Some are pre-IPO, and increasingly, the people that I'm eavesdropping into, that they're looking for high growth opportunities that have not yet IPO'd and may never IPO.
That's absolutely true. So people don't realize that the UK has some tax quirks which are very, very good for investors. And among them are the so-called EIS schemes, the VCT schemes, and so forth. Basically, they allow investors to get a portion of the investment back through tax. In the case of the EIS schemes, I believe it's 30%. So you go into an investment at a 30% discount as a result of the tax rebate. And that doesn't really exist in countries elsewhere to the same extent as it does in the UK. So for investors who don't just look at the tax, but also look at the underlying fundamentals of companies. For instance, I invest in EIS companies to offset my UK taxation. And it's a very effective way of investing. And these companies, as you rightly point out, may never go public. They may just pay dividends or they may be acquired. But that doesn't really matter to the long-term investor. They also become capital gains tax free, which is very important to some investors. And as you know, AIM companies, which are highly represented in the show, are generally capital gains tax free as well, which is something that a lot of people don't realize, but it makes a significant difference to investors who invest in those companies.
There's going to be a lot of speakers as well, and I'm anticipating there's going to be lots of references to a UK general election and one in the US. So I'm just wondering how the outcomes of these events might shape and define the investment landscape.
Yeah, that's another good question. I'm in the States and I'm in Florida, which is Donald Trump territory. And in the country club on this estate where my apartment is situated, everyone sounds like Attila the Hun, basically. They are so right-wing as to be untrue. And my friends tell me that there is actually a very good chance that my friends who know about these things say there's a very good chance, as you know, that Donald Trump will be re-elected. Not so much because of him, but because Biden is a very low-grade or uncertain candidate. So we don't know if Biden will step down. It's very unlikely because, he's got his fingers on the power levers at the moment and people don't tend to want to get rid of them. But if he does go ahead, I think that as the candidate for the Democrats, I think there's a really good chance that Trump gets elected. Now, will that have a negative effect on markets? It might on some foreign markets because, Donald Trump is proposing a 10% across the board tax on imports into the United States, which is highly protectionist. Not a good idea, in my opinion, and it would definitely affect countries like China, Vietnam, Germany, countries which are big exporting nations. So that wouldn't be good. But if you look at his last administration, apart from the sort of the hubbub and the chaos and all that sort of stuff, did he do anything to destabilize the U.S. economy? Not really. And the U.S. economy kept on growing through his reign, so to speak. I mean, obviously the pandemic wasn't that great, but I doubt it will have any major effect on the U.S. market in particular. On the other hand, my view is that the U.S. market is overpriced, so maybe this will provide an excuse for it to sell off. Who knows? It's much more important what the Fed does than what Donald Trump does as far as the U.S. economy is concerned.
Well, let's take that all into consideration and let's come back to the show, because which sectors most excite you and which companies are you most looking forward to learning about who'll be appearing at the show?
Well, I'm not going to name any specific companies because, it would be unfair. But I will say that from my personal point of view, I think the UK is an undervalued market, both in international metrics and also from individual corporations. And the UK is a very outward-looking market in the sense that many of the major companies in the UK derive a lot of their income from overseas. And the UK is also a big dividend producer. So, the UK market on average is producing somewhere over 4% in dividends, which is way higher than most other markets around the world. And they're typically consistent and growing dividends. The UK market's selling at about 11 times earnings, which is internationally very cheap. And what will happen, in my opinion, is that either there'll be a greater recognition of the merits of UK shares, and I'm talking in particular financial services shares, commodity producers, producers of things like drinks. So, for instance, Diageo is a good example of that. Or some of these companies will get acquired by private equity, which is sitting supposedly on very large amounts of money and looking for opportunities. So we're going to see a lot of corporate acquisition activity over the next year, particularly in the United Kingdom. It's a big mistake to say, oh, London has lost its crown as a financial center, because at some point last year, Paris was a slightly bigger stock market than London. That was all due to LVMH being very highly rated, which now rated basically since then. So, of course, London is now the largest European market again. But London is not just about the stock market. And if you look at the London Stock Exchange Group as an example, which is a very big company, the stock market element of the London Stock Exchange Group is very small. Its sale of data and is much more important to it. So in some areas such as foreign exchange, such as bond syndication, the UK is absolutely, or London is absolutely the world leader and remains so. And very little of the business of the City of London has gone to Europe. In fact, almost negligible amounts have gone to Europe. So London has retained its crown, and I'm quite optimistic about British shares over the next, say, 5 years. So, yeah, I'll be recommending some British shares in my own talk. And there are shares elsewhere that I'll be recommending as well. So, come up with what should be a good, balanced portfolio. And I will say that I'll reiterate my call on gold, which, as you know, is at near an all-time high and has done very well in the last year. And I think I'll be talking a bit more about gold and the ways in which you can invest in it, and precious metals generally as an inflation and investment hedge, which should be integral to everyone's portfolio.
Okay, well, you've certainly whet our appetite to come and listen to you at the show, Jim. So finally, how's the next book coming on?
That's a great question. I hope to finish my. I love the way you just asked that question. I hope to finish my latest children's book, which is number 2 in the series about the dog Juno, in the next couple of days. And so one of the reasons for being here is to actually, get a bit of peace and quiet and to do that. And it's called Juno Goes to London. And the next book, from an investment point of view, is on nuclear fusion. That will come out sometime in the middle of this year. It's hard slog writing about something that's so technical. And I've got a great new idea for an investment theme, which I'm not going to talk about yet, but hopefully I'll be able to mention at the Master Investor Show. So watch this space and please come along to the Master Investor Show. I know you'll be there, Sarah. So I look forward to seeing you there.
Many, many thanks. Well, you've got lots to get on with, so you better get cracking then. Jim Mellon, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks a lot, Sarah. Thanks.